Hey, what is up? It's Jim. I'm back with another Tiller tip. This week I'm talking about guilt versus shame. I believe that these two words are used very interchangeably, but there is a huge difference between the two words, and I think it's important to understand that. So let's get off to a fast start. And guilt. I believe that it is something that is from God. I think that God is the author of justice, and therefore he is the author of guilt. There is good versus bad. There is right versus wrong. And when we will do well to do the things that we should, but when we do the things that we shouldn't, we are guilty of that. And that's an unfortunate place to be. I mean, honestly, this is something I talk about with guys all the time. This is a common deal. You know, when you engage in pornography, that is something that you were guilty of. That is, guilt. You were guilty of something against your wife if you're married. You were guilty of something against God, because that is clearly lustful and sinful, and you've done wrong, right? And I don't want to make that any bigger than it needs to be, but black and white. You are guilty of that, right? When I think of guilt, I think of, I'm guilty of so many things. A lot of my guilt comes in the car because I just don't follow laws very well as I drive. I am a fast driver. I remember one time I got a ticket, not for driving fast, but for making an illegal right turn. As if that's a thing, like an illegal right turn. Has anyone ever heard of that? Basically, the scenario here is I was trying to avoid the toll road, and so I needed to make a right turn and then an immediate left turn and then another right turn, like right away. And in order to make that left turn, I needed to make the right turn out of the left right turn lane. Does that make any sense to you? It didn't make sense to me. When I got pulled over, the cop said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "No, I cannot even begin to guess." And he tried explaining it to me, but I was just not having it. I was very salty, and he gave me a ticket. I was so mad, and I determined I was going to fight it. If I had paid the ticket in the first 10 days or something like that, I would have gotten reduced points on my license. And I determined I was going to go to court, and I made a video to show the judge like how confusing this was and how mismarked everything was and how confusing. I don't know. I was very convinced walking into the courtroom that I had a solid case and I was going to be found not guilty. And so I walk in there and I tell them my name, and they have me sit down, and immediately something in me shifts. I start to feel very nervous. I'm sweating in places. I'm very anxious. And what I'm beginning to realize is, it does not matter if you know the laws. If you break the law, you are guilty. I can't go to a murder defense and be like, "Oh, I didn't know that murder was wrong, that was illegal." If you murder someone, you're going to be found guilty of murder. And certainly this wasn't that serious, but I became very nervous. And eventually they called my name, and I stood up to face the music, and they said, "Your case has been dismissed." And I was so grateful, oh my gosh, yes, let's go. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, long story short, the cop didn't show up, and because the cop wasn't there, they couldn't have a trial, and so I just got everything dismissed. I went from regretting not paying that ticket right away to not getting any points on my license. It was awesome. And honestly, as a sidebar, I believe that that's what heaven's going to be like. I picture, going to heaven and, sitting down on Judgment Day and being like, "Oh my gosh, I am pretty guilty here. I'm not even totally sure of all the things I'm guilty of, but why didn't I do better? Why didn't I try harder?" And, my name's going to be called, and then, the angel's going to say, "Hey, your case has been dismissed." And it's going to be the greatest feeling in all of the universe, just because there's no need for a case. Jesus paid for my sins. He paid my guilt. And that's what that's going to be like. It's going to feel electric, and I can't wait for that. So all of that to say, that's what guilt is. And I very much think that that's of God. Now, shame is something totally different. I believe that shame takes, our aspect of guilt and then it twists it just like 1%. And this is a tactic of the enemy. I believe that, if you look at Satan in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, he very much took what was true, but he just twisted it enough, that it became something different. It confused us and it, trapped us, and it caused a cycle of sin, frankly. And I believe shame is that thing for us. It is how we feel about our guilt. And Satan does really well to convince us that we don't deserve good things, or that, we're no good, or I don't even know. Like, it can be any number of things. This feeling of shame inside of us gets us trapped in a spin cycle of sin. I just believe it. I talk with so many guys that are guilty of things like pornography, and they feel all this shame, and they just feel like this is their lot in life. And I'm like, no, man, like, we could deal with our guilt. I mean, Jesus has dealt with our guilt, like, we don't have to feel the shame. We don't have to let the enemy win and remind us and keep us trapped. Like, we can live free and not shackled by shame. And I just think knowing the difference between guilt and shame might be your first step for whatever it is that you might be struggling with, whatever you might be guilty of. Because whatever it is, I know it's not good. I know that you don't like it. But that cycle of shame, I know isn't helping you either. So, there's probably a lot that can be done. Coaching is one of those things that you can do to help express and help to find some freedom in shame. Obviously, prayer, journaling, all kinds of things to express this stuff so that the enemy can't get you wrapped up in that bondage. I just don't think shame is of God. So that's what I have for this week. I'd love to know your thoughts if you agree or disagree on this. I really appreciate you checking this out. And I guess I'll see you next time. See you then.